Good evening and welcome to the Drive at 5 on IntellectualRadio.com/iHeart Radio station. I'm your host, Roman, and we have a terrific show planned for you today. But first, the forecast from our IntellectualRadio.com weather center today. Partly sunny, high 85 degrees. Tonight, partly sunny skies. Tonight, partly cloudy skies, high 71 degrees. Tomorrow, partly sunny and humid, increasing throughout the day, high 87 degrees. Tomorrow night, cloudy and humid, slight chance of showers or even a thunderstorms, low 73 degrees. Wednesday, severe thunderstorms will be in the area, and it may be a weather alert here or there as the day progresses throughout the day, high 79 degrees. On Thursday, partly sunny with a chance of showers, may be a weather alert here or there as the day progresses throughout the day, high 79 degrees. On Thursday, partly sunny with a chance of showers, high 79 degrees. On Friday, scattered thunderstorms, high 80 degrees. The Drive at 5 is also part of the new Monday night lineup, starting with a new show called Policy Matters with Jonathan Todd at 6 p.m. New Black Leadership at 7 p.m. Black Dream Makers at 8 p.m., 9 p.m. Chronicles of Ron, and Raw Checklist at 10 p.m. Also, the Drive at 5 is also part of the fabulous 5 at 5 only on IntellectualRadio.com. Today, my guest is a former gubernatorial candidate and community leader. Please give a Drive at 5 welcome back on the intellectual line to the one and only T.O. Hardeman. Welcome back to the Drive, sir.
I'm glad to be back on with you, Roman.
Well, let's begin with what happened in regards to the Lakeshore Drive and to Wrigley protest. Please explain to our listening audience what was the goal or message you and others were trying to send to the mayor?
Well, the goal and the message of the Lakeshore Drive shutdown is two to threefold. Number one, we're tired of a lot of people receiving funds for violence prevention. Like Arnie Duncan received $90 million. He didn't receive it from the city, but the face of violence prevention is basically 5 white men receiving millions of dollars to reduce violence in Chicago, and it makes no sense. That was one of the goals. You got another guy, Kenny Gross, over on the west side. In the south side, Arnie Duncan. You got David Kennedy from John Jay College out of New York City with a David Kennedy program. Black Death is a hustle. So that message was consistent. Number two, we push for more de-escalation training with police officers out here, which is very important. And that was number two, and to make sure that the police stop shooting African-American males in particular in the back. They have a policy that they pretty much implemented, and they have to practice and abide by their policies. And number three, African-American contractors should receive their fair share of city and state contracts. And that was the triple message out there. And I believe everybody heard our message. And another goal was to redistribute the pain for a little while and allow the people to feel some of the pain we feel every day on the south, east, and west sides of Chicago.
Do you think you and others have accomplished that goal?
Well, I know for a fact we accomplished the goal because since we marched, I've been called in to talk to people on a higher level to talk about how we can make things happen in the African American community. For example, Arnie Duncan receiving $90 million. With $90 million, I can hire every young man on every corner in Chicago for the next 30 years and their family members. So if you really want to stop the killings in Chicago and everybody say we need jobs, how can you give Arnie Duncan $90 million? And Arnie Duncan is the architect of Renaissance 2010, where they transferred young people from Chicago public schools and closed down schools, and it led to a major bloodbath, in 2010 with Chicago public school students. How can you actually get his guy $90 million? He got some program called Chicago Cred. The thing is, we plan to organize thousands of people to protest Arnie Duncan real soon, and we would like some of our questions to be answered because it makes no sense to me. Everybody's profiting off of Black Death. It's time to bring an end to it. We must unify. That was part of the message as well.
What are some of the questions you hope to get answered
Well,
while you
first and
process?
foremost, he needs to turn over half of the funding to black-owned, not violence prevention organizations. That's number one. We want to ask that question. Why won't you give half of that? That's like $45 million. Distribute that money to African American owned and operated organizations to help them stop the violence, and not just be an overseer of the money. We don't have to buck dance to nobody just because. See, it's really an issue, Roman. If you want to be technical about it, it makes no sense that I'm not against no race, creed, or color, but I'm really for my people. See, we out here drowning in blood in our communities, and these people out here making big money off the bloodshed. And the more shootings, the more the police do overtime, the more killings. Everybody's talking about they need more money, more money. The thing is, give the money to black folks. Let them take care of their own business out here now. That's the message that I'm putting out there now all across the universe. I was on CNN talking about it, Fox National News talking about it, talked about it on all the local news stations in Chicago, and now I'm about to take it to the highest level. My plan is to organize 50 to 100,000 African American people in Chicago and the state of Illinois so that we can make sure that our voice is being heard. Not just heard, we would like to bring back some results, okay? We're talking about results now.
Some people would say, okay, why not Arnie Duncan? Some money been going to black organizations all the time, and there's no results. What would you say to those skeptics?
There's not one black organization that I know about, and I've been in Chicago all my life, that received $90 million to reduce gun violence in Chicago. There's not one. You don't even have black organizations. They probably at the highest level, $1 million, $2 million. You got Tenny Gross getting $15, $20 million. He's from Providence, Rhode Island, but he's also from Tel Aviv, Israel. This the thing. Over in Africa, when the Belgians were in the Congo, Central Africa, does it make any sense that the people from the Congo end up working for Belgian people in their own country? Does that make any sense? Another thing you got to think about, you got violence over in Israel against the Palestinians. Why won't the guy Tenney open up a program over there and let some black people run it and allow them to stop the Israelis from killing Palestinians? How about that? What I'm talking about is speaking truth to power now and standing stronger than ever, organizing my people so that we can stop the killing in our community, number one. And number two, give us the resources. Allow the organizations in our community to hire all them young brothers that you say are the problem young men. Allow us the opportunity to hire them people directly ourselves. And if we can't stop the violence, that's one thing. But I guarantee you, we can reduce it by 80%. $90 million is an insult. It's a major knockout punch to black not-for-profit organizations that work in the field of violence prevention. This is what you call white privilege. It's not acceptable, and we plan to rally around this issue in a major way.
Chicago Tribune reported recently over the weekend that Mayor Rahm Emanuel has provided more resources on the north side and downtown, leaving parts of the south side and west side without any resources for quite some time. What are your thoughts to this new development in the Chicago Tribune?
Well, our black elected officials need to be held responsible for that. Mayor Rahm Emanuel is doing nothing more than what his constituents, ask him to do. And his constituents on the north side are unified, and they make sure they get their resources. We got a lot of these elected officials in the African American community in particular that go with the program all the time. They keep voting. All the aldermen vote the same way with the mayor. It's no mistake that South Shore is a bleeding community economically, a lot of gun violence, dilapidated buildings everywhere. It's no mistake that Madison and Pulaski looks like like downtown East St. Louis. They need to rebuild East St. Louis. I talked about it when I ran for governor, but at the same time, they really need to take a look at Madison Pulaski should be like a Mecca. 16th in Lawndale, 75th in Cottage Grove, 79th in Cottage Grove. All those empty storefronts out there. You see, it's no mistake. I know the people on the north side are going to receive their resources from the mayor, because they are a unified body. We are so divided, and our black elected officials should be held accountable for the division out here, because every time something goes on major, then you hear from everybody. But when it comes down to being on the ground working, You don't hear from them until you have a bloodbath. Now everybody wants to talk good talk like they're doing something. It's time to take care of the business once and for all. Reduce killings in Chicago by 80%. It can be done, but black folks need the resources to work in their own community.
Why not protest or shut down the Black Alderman's office or the Black Caucus that can force the mayor and force legislators to comply to the rules? Here's my thought process, Tio. My thought process is I think most community leaders are channeling their anger at the wrong direction instead of the people who say, vote for me. This is an election year, an automatic election year. Why we're not shutting down and protesting in front of the alderman's office who has more control? You have the Black Caucus that's inside City Hall. You have a Black Caucus that's downstate. Why we're not holding them accountable? You said hold them accountable, but we don't see it. We don't hear it.
No, I just talked about that, Brother Roman. Let me slow it down for you because I might talk fast sometime here. Let me say this. That's the point I'm making. Like on Friday, August 17th at 7 p.m., I put a clarion call out for African American Unity Day in the North Lawndale community. We plan to meet on 16th and Pulaski and walk the streets 200 or 300 strong. It's not a march against violence, none of that. It's an African American Unity Day in which I'm asking us all to unify. And I agree with you. We should be protesting the alderman's office. We should be protesting the state rep's office, the state senators. But we need all hands on deck. And I can't be everywhere all the time, but I would love to see us organize, let's say, about 90 different protests on the same day at the alderman's office until they make sure that African American people receive their fair share of resources. I would like to see 79th Street renovated and rebuilt to a degree. South Shore looks like a deserted area in some places, 75th and Exchange. I would love to see that community renewed, so to speak, Roman. So, and I'm really talking about the West Side as well. So I agree with you when it comes down to addressing some of these African American aldermen and state reps, senators, and congressmen.
Getting back to the Lakeshore Drive to Wrigley protests, local and social media outlets had different numbers who participated in the march. What was your assessment of the crowd size during the march?
Well, I look at it like this here. But they try to downplay us. We had close to 400 people. We actually had a Department of Justice counter out there that was, counted around 400 people out there close to the end. So I'm not worried about that. The reality, we shut down Lakeshore Drive. It's just hard for some media outlets to give a black man credit for shutting down Lakeshore Drive, getting the message out with a lot of people out there. The beauty about it, we had a diverse audience. We had black, white, Hispanic, Asian people. The beauty, nobody went to jail, nobody got hurt. I mean, it was amazing, and it's very important. They allowed Father Flagler to shut down the Dan Ryan. I mean, I don't see nobody talking to him about, the numbers and all that. What did they expect him to have? 10,000, 50,000? He had, several hundred people. We had 400 people. So, I mean, I feel good about it because at the end of the day, I'm a proven community leader, and I respect my people. I don't play games with the people. We got the message out. Lakeshore Drive has never been shut down before.
Some media outlets have also called the gathering mediocre and disorganized. It was considered a dog and pony show because of everyone wanted to be seen and heard. Can you set the record straight? What really happened there?
Well, how was it mediocre? They would say that because if that's the case, you can compare. I hate to compare Father Flagler's march with our march because I'm not trying to do that. But what made his any different than our march? We marched for some of the same issues: economic development on the southwest and east side of Chicago. We marched for de-escalation training with the police, stop the police killing in our community, stop the violence in our community. Nothing's mediocre about it. And one thing about it, we did not choose to march on a weekend, on a Saturday afternoon. We marched during rush hour traffic. Rush hour traffic. There's no parking on Lakeshore Drive. There's no parking around Belmont. We marched down to Wrigley Field. So I'm grateful for the people that showed up and turned out with us. No one can take that from us. It was a logistical nightmare, really. It's more convenient if you're marching on the south side where everybody that's coming to the march, they live on the south side. They can just walk with you on the Dan Ryan or whatever. But Father Flager, I have no issue with nobody. It's just, it's time for qualified black leaders to step up to the plate. It's just when black folks step up, everybody got something to say. Everybody got something to say. It's time for us to take charge in our community and bring these young brothers to the table of peace.
There was a little bit of controversy between you and Reverend Gregory Livingston during the march that played out on social media and local media outlets. Can you explain to us what happened and why it was a controversy? Because on ABC7, I'm naming them specifically because that was the one that I've watched, said that you guys are separated. You won't deal with each other no more. Can you explain what happened and why it was played out in front of media outlets? What happened?
Well, first and foremost, Reverend Livingston and I, we made peace. We never had no major issue. We had different ideologies. That's the only thing we had is different ideologies. The reality is I'm not in favor of nobody getting arrested, nobody getting hurt. My whole goal was to make sure I took care of the business out there. When we shut Lakeshore Drive down, Reverend Livingston was from the ideology that, Dr. King and all those people went to jail back in the day. T.O. Hardeman, I cannot stand any bad press. T.O. Hardeman getting arrested, they put a whole different spin on it. I'm not trying to go through that. So that was the only difference. I didn't want nobody to bomb rush Wrigley Field. I didn't want nobody to go out there and get hurt on Lakeshore Drive. So I took command of the Lakeshore Drive protest because I'm the one that organized the protest. But we made peace. That's my brother. There's no issue. But I noticed some people a little bit more grandiose than others. Some people, see, I'm cut from this. If you organize something together, we together on it. And when he got, he did I think a press conference. Well, he did an interview on the news the very next day, saying he was going to shut down the Kennedy going into O'Hare. That was my issue right there because nobody actually checked in with nobody or consulted with nobody. And when I sent my press release out, I had to let everybody know I have no intentions on shutting down the Kennedy leading into O'Hare during the Labor Day weekend. I don't want to mess up people's travel plans for Labor Day weekend. I just refuse to do it. And that's where the difference came in at. But I'm sure we might collaborate in the future. But for everybody listening, I want you to know that Reverend Livingston and I, we are brothers. We made peace, but we have different ideologies in some of these situations here.
Brother Tio, I have a lot of respect for you and your service to the community as well as Reverend Livingston. I told many leaders this over and over again on this show. Could you guys work their disagreements in closed doors instead of on social media or media outlets up front to make it not a spectacle or us not being together? And it makes people in other races think we are divided and it's easy to turn against each other. Your thoughts of having community leaders to work out their disagreements or settlements or, as you put it, ideology behind closed doors in a closed door environment instead of like in front of the cameras, in front of social media?
Well, first and foremost, I never posted anything on social media. I'm a grown man. I think the media, I did send a press release out letting everybody know I had nothing to do with any shutdown of the Kennedy going into O'Hare, and I had to distance myself from that particular event. But I agree with you, but we are divided. The community is divided. That's why you have so much killing out in the community, Roman. See, I'm doing my best to try to raise African-American, raise a thought process with my brothers and sisters out there so we can stop this killing. I told a lot of media outlets, if you interview somebody about violence in Chicago and they cannot tell you the last time they stopped the killing, they cannot tell you the last time they mediated a conflict, they should not be interviewing on the news because everybody's making a name off of Black Death out here, and it's time to stop playing. That's the only thing I told Brother Livingston is that I don't play with the people. I'm not going to lead people to get arrested. That was our different ideology right there. I've been through that stuff before. I'm not trying to take people down that road, not me, okay? Because that's it there. And then the world needs to know that I don't play with the people. That's why I put it out there the way we put it out there. But like I say, we are brothers, but I do agree with you about, I've been in many, many closed door meetings behind the scenes. A lot of our people, look, let me tell you like it is, Roman.
I'm here.
Let me see the best way I can explain it. We have a lot of people in our community with no backbone, including some of these politicians. They run around, play the game. They trying to be politically correct while people continue to die out here. The illegal gun trade needs to be dealt with effectively. The law enforcement, they're not intercepting the illegal flow of guns. The illegal drug trade needs to be dealt with effectively. Billions of dollars have been spent on trying to intercept the illegal drug trade and the illegal gun trade to no avail. The Black community is like drowning with drugs, drowning with illegal guns. And as an end result, our people are being killed. They've been talking this same talk for the last 30 years, Roman. It's time to stop playing games. That's what I'm trying to say right now. And I don't want to come off, I'm not sounding like an angry brother. I'm a very intellectual young man, thought leader, but we need to stop playing games. If you had to call somebody out, I don't just call out African-American leaders. I just talked about Arnie Duncan. How's it that a white guy receives $90 million for violence prevention in the Black community, and he's the architect of Renaissance 2010? What I'm talking about is factual. Go look up the research on Renaissance 2010 and then get back with me. It's time to quit playing games. We trying to be too nice all the time, and we're steady dying out here. We are steady dying, Roman. That's why I'm talking this way with this type of passion.
You think the mayor should resign?
Well, this is the thing about the mayor, and I'm just saying this on Intellectual Radio on the Drive at 5. The Black community voted Mayor Rahm Emanuel back in, knowing that he had issues. They decided to release the Laquan McDonald tape after the election, the execution, the straight-up murder of Laquan McDonald. Put you in reminiscence of what happened to Emmett Till down in Mississippi. Here it is, the year 20 when Laquan was shot and killed. He was shot 16 times. Only thing I can say, the mayor's in an uphill battle. The reality is that he was on the news about a week ago when we had the rash of shooting, saying it's about morals and values. Where were your morals and values when you decided not to release the tape? You know that man was executed. Where was your morals and values? That's my problem right there. But if the Black community votes him back in office, along with everybody else, then he'll become the mayor again. Our people are too divided, bro. We too divided. We quick to forgive everybody else, but we will not forgive one another. That's the reality. It's politics. Politics, Brother Roman. And so people need to hear this from a real leader talking to the people today on Intellectual Radio, the Drive at 5. You know, if the mayor resign, that's up to him. I'm not even calling for him to resign anymore. Not me. Let the people deal with that. If the people vote him back in, he deserves to be in. But if the people don't vote him in, he won't be in. I'm not going to complicate the issues anymore because our people are quick to forgive everybody else. We get selective amnesia when it's somebody else, but when it's one of us, we always try to bring up situations with people. Okay? Always. When it's the Black man. Give me a break, man. Ain't nobody got time for that stuff no more. If the mayor wins again, he wins again. I'm not calling for the resignation of nobody because the Black community continues to do the same thing year after year, decade after decade. We have over 600,000 registered Black voters in Chicago, 2 million registered Black voters in Illinois, and we still cannot unify. We are a major voting bloc. That's why everybody comes to the Black community to secure votes because our votes are like gold, like a gold mine. But if you look at the conditions in our community, we still don't receive our fair share of anything, even though we vote these people in office. And that's incumbent upon Black elected officials who are not taking care of their business all the way.
The police in video and audio is a command to turn on and not a legislation. Why do Black Caucus members allow this to go on for so many years, a long time, without any legislation behind it? The vests that the police officers wear, they have to alert you. It's more of a command than it is a legislation. Like by Illinois state law, you are required to turn it on and the audio on. It's more of an order. Why we're not putting pressure on our Black leadership? Again, it goes back to my question that I told you earlier. We have a Black Caucus in City Hall, a Black Caucus in Springfield. You mentioned the voting block. The votes are there. Why we're not getting the proper legislation and the transition and the transparency that we need in our community?
Well, when you talk about this issue with the police, the cameras being turned on, you got to understand how slick what they're doing with the camera issues. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, and I know I heard this on the news where superintendent said that normally when a police officer encounters, somebody on the streets or whatever, the camera doesn't kick in until 30 seconds later. It's like a delay. So that first 30 seconds, you're not going to get no audio or no footage or anything. But anything can happen. It only takes 3 seconds to shoot somebody. So once again, apparently they're playing with the people once again. And then African American, look, people see this is the thing. You vote people in office, like you got some of these long-term congressmen, black and white alike, and whoever. They've been in office, man. They like 89, 90 years old. I mean, Danny Davis is my man. I respect him a lot, but come on, pass the torch, man. Pass the torch. You're still going to be seen as the congressman. You got people need. I agree with term limits. Term limits. I plan to always respect Danny Davis. I'm not saying as a slight to him, but pass the torch to somebody. Bobby Rush. We need to rush him out of office. Pass the torch, man. Quit playing games because you guys are not effective as you used to be. It's been a wrap. That's our problem. We don't want to give it up. Jesse Jackson is my man, but it's time to pass the torch. Minister Louis Farrakhan, pass the torch. You got to see what happens. We as leaders stay in that spot so long, and then we just become so comfortable. That's what's going on. A lot of the state senators, they've been in them positions for years, and they become comfortable with their retirement, their paycheck. I don't blame them. Why not stay in the spot if you can? But in reality, if you got if you want to see the people advance, pass the torch. That's what you're dealing with out here, comfortability, Roman. That's why some policies are not pushed, because nobody's trying to mess up their little good thing. I mean, people not gonna mess up their good thing, bro, and you can't blame them for that. You can't blame people for that.
Before I let you go, what are your thoughts about the 71st Street police shooting? It's too many questions, and the questions are not even answered, not even remotely not even a little bit.
Well, you don't have too many unanswered questions. I believe in being straight up. The reality, I'm really sorry and sad Brother Augustus Harith was killed. The reality is that Brother Augustus was partially wrong, partially right. The police were partially wrong and partially right. Let me explain. When the black officer was talking to the young man, and it appeared that the young man was trying or attempting to show him something, get something out of his wallet, to show him his 4A card or whatever he was showing him, okay? The other officer came up and grabbed the guy from behind. Now, keep in mind, Brother Augustus should not have had a gun on him. We're not going to play games with that. He should not have had a gun in his possession at all, even though he was a 4A card holder, but he did not have concealed carry. Now, was he a threat in the community? No. He was not a threat to the police. He was not a threat to nobody in the community. A well-established young man in the South Shore community with a lot of respect. The police should have handled the situation in a different way, de-escalated the situation, whereas now, I'm just hypothetically speaking now and putting myself in the mind of Brother Augustus, and it's hard to do that. Okay, let's say I'm Augustus. Yeah, I have a gun on me, officer. Here's my 4A card. I don't have concealed carry. You can take the gun, and they're going to arrest him anyway, and he'll get out post bond or whatever, and it will be probably a misdemeanor case because he did have a 4A card, okay? That's one scenario. Another scenario is that the police should have just talked to him and say, look here, young man, we need to get that gun from you, instead of grabbing him like they grabbed, because he did not pose a threat. Hopefully that makes sense to you. And he will be here today with his daughter and his family. So the way I'm reading the situation, now when he ran and turned around, he got shot. So I don't believe Brother Augustus was going to shoot at the police. I really don't believe he had no intention on shooting any police that day or any day, because he didn't have a criminal background other than a misdemeanor. But when them buckshots hit him, it turned his body around and it made it look like he was going to try to go for his gun. But that was not the case. The police could have shot low and not killed that young man. And the officers that were out there, some of them were in training. The black community is being used as an experimental laboratory for police training. There's no other community being used like the black community. The same way the police put a bait truck up in Inglewood with Nike gym shoes trying to entrap young black men to steal Nike gym shoes off a truck. When all this killing going on out here and they cannot resolve, the homicide clearance rate is 16%, and everybody's getting shot. They put a bait truck on the south side of Chicago. That's why we march for more de-escalation training for the police, and that's my answer to you, Roman.
You are listening to IntellectualRadio.com/iHeart radio station, The Drive at 5. On the intellectual line is former gubernatorial candidate and community leader T.O. Hardeman. If our listeners wants to get a hold of you, wants to participate in the marches, what should they do? Who they should contact?
They can follow me on Facebook at T.O. Hardeman, Twitter, T.O. Hardeman, LinkedIn. I post all my information up there. My website is violenceinterrupters.org. You can go to my website. And remember, Friday, August 17th at 7 p.m., everybody can meet me on 16th and Pulaski in the North Lawndale community, close to K-Town as well, for the African American Unity Day rally and, or, like demonstration where we hit the community and try to unify people. Right now, I would like to unify all black folks in Chicago. That's what I plan to do. My goal right now is to unify all our people around 2 or 3 issues and make sure we reach our goals and reduce the killing and then unify these brothers so we can have a black man salute every day when a young black man leaves his house. Before he even leaves out of the front door, I would like for a black man to say, I have no intentions today on harming another black man. I have no intentions on carrying a gun out here to shoot another black man today. I have every intention on taking care of my family today instead of hurting somebody in my community. That's the black man salute, and we plan to add a few more bullet points to that. And that's what that's one of my goals, is to meet these young brothers where they are and see if we can get everybody on the same page. It will not be easy because there's too much hurt in the community and too much pain, and we got to help people get past the hurt and pain, Brother Roman. So I would like for everybody to just join forces with us out there on Friday.
All right, will do. Thank you so much, my man. And next time I want you in the studio.
I'll be there, brother, and hopefully I gave you a lot of information. I thank you.
Oh, will do. Always a pleasure, my man. Thank you so much. When we come back on the Drive at 5 on IntellectualRadio.com/iHeart radio station, author and scholar Andre Brown, when we come back on the Drive at 5 on IntellectualRadio.com. And we're back on the Drive at 5 on IntellectualRadio.com/iHeart radio station. My next guest is an author and a scholar. Please welcome to the Drive at 5 to Andre Brown. Welcome to the Drive.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm
You
glad to be
have
here.
a new book that's out. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, but
Okay.
please give intellectualradio.com/iHeart radio station your background.
Okay. Grew up on the south side of Chicago. Inglewood, one of the roughest areas in the city, one of the roughest areas in the city. Attended Beasley Academic Center. Um, Going through that process, I had like a lot of rough encounters, so I went from being one individual to someone else, right? So that's kind of what I talk about in the book.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, it's one of the first stories is called Baptism by Fire. You know what I mean? So it's kind of, so the way the book is written, it's like if I came and I got you, and then I went and we knocked on the door, and the 5-year-old me came out. And you went through this process and you followed me around for like 40 years. So that's what it's like, So I have a 2-year-old daughter right now. And, it's interesting to see the innocence that she has at this point. You know what I'm saying? So going back into my background, I grew up in Inglewood, went to Lindblom, I played sports, and then I went on to SIU. In Carbondale, I did some studying abroad, and I just kind of, been like backpacking through like Asia and Europe, and I lived in North Africa.
How was that experience living in North Africa?
It was interesting. I was in Egypt at the time. I kind of went there. I wanted to do like a documentary on the Nubian people, but I found myself in a lot of other things. When I'm two of my buddies that went with me, and it's like a guy like I think it's one thing to have a philosophical, idea about what Egypt is like, or wherever it's like, but then to go there and see it, and it's not what you thought it was going to be. So
can you define that just a little bit? I mean, we when you think of Egypt, you think of the pyramids, you think of the sand. A lot of people think sand is brown, but it's white, know, and it's like purest of the pure.
Yeah.
So, what image besides that you say is not what it appears to be?
You know what? First of all, like the pyramids are very close to the city. Like you'd be like amazed how close the proximity is from the city to like the actual pyramid. So it's like basically the pyramids are out in the desert. The Sphinx is like out in the desert. They're very close in proximity, but they basically built the city right next to the pyramid. So that's one thing that I found interesting about being over there. But another thing was like the exploitation of the Sudanese people. So there was like a civil war going on in the Sudan at the time. And you had these club owners and things like that. They would exploit them, like they bring tourists in and they get the tourists to buy drinks and things like that. And, it was just an exploitive type of environment that, I mean, upon going there, I'd never been there before, that I had no idea what was going on. It was also like it was like a lot of racism, over there in that area as well, towards people of darker skin and Africans.
It sounds like the slave trade kind of, sort of, right?
I think that it was just an exploitive situation. I wouldn't say slave trade, but it was definitely exploitive, where a lot of the Sudanese women were being forced into prostitution and things like that. You know what I mean? And that's something that I've witnessed a lot, in a lot of places that I've been, is that the Africans are being exploited, especially the women, into like prostitution.
Now, you see that and you witness that firsthand. What was your reaction, or, did you have to restrain yourself saying, I'm in a different part, I can't react, or something?
I was amazed. I was amazed at not only that it was going on, but it was going on everywhere. And, the women were being exploited, you know what I mean? So I actually like sat down and I actually talked to her. It was she was a prostitute from Ethiopia, and I was in Thailand, and I just sat back, and it's like, she just kind of gave me the rundown of what that process is like, where they basically like let them in the country and things like that. Like, so she goes from country to country, and she's being exploited But she said she was talking to me about it, and I was trying to keep a straight face, but it was painful to see, and she said, this bothers you, doesn't it? And I said, it does. She said, well, what can you do about it? And I was like, it's nothing that I can do, but it was something that I was not aware of, that, every place that, uh, you know, every place that was colonized are in this situation, what I mean, where people of color have been colonized, they're in this state of subjugation. And there is also a level of like they've lost themselves through this process, so in talking about the book, this was another thing that motivated me to kind of put pen to paper and to kind of get this out there, because I think that when you live in a bubble, you don't realize that a lot of things are like the effects of colonization and white supremacy. They are not just here, they're like all over, and a lot of people are in difficult situations as a result of that.
You mentioned in your bio that you have worked with foster children and the way African American young men handle themselves caused some concerns to you. Can you explain that? I mean, we had T.O. Hardeman on just a few minutes ago, and he was talking about this almost the same exact things, not word for word, but almost the same thing. You mentioned kind of like manhandle in that expression. Can you elaborate a little bit?
Well, one thing that I will say is that there are different levels of dysfunction in our community, right? So in the book, I like to talk about the root of the dysfunction and like have hard conversations, so those conversations where when you start talking, somebody just like jump over you and start talking over you. You ever been in a situation like that where you're talking about something and somebody just jumps over you and start talking over you?
All the time.
You know what? People do that because whatever you're talking about is too painful. They don't want to deal with whatever the conversation is about, right?
I always thought it was like they don't accept your ideology or your method or methodology.
I think that, well, the way I look at it is that people don't want to have that conversation, because I've been that person as well, so because I've been that person, I see it and I recognize that behavior in other people, like, oh, this must be something that's difficult to talk about, or this is something that makes someone uncomfortable, so the book is about talking about the root of why certain things are going on, and it's an uncomfortable conversation to have, so going back to watching how the young men handle each other, I think that as I've gotten older, I've become more thin-skinned, to the things that were going on. I think growing up in the South Side of Chicago and being in a lot of violent situations, I was kind of desensitized from it, but I think that the older I've gotten, I've become more thin-skinned. And I also look that I have two daughters, which is the book actually started out as letters to my daughter to give them some insight into our community, because they're not going to have the same upbringing that I have, So, looking at, the different things that's going on, working in places and understanding that most of the people that are in the situation, they look exactly like me. I mean, exactly like me. And they have like a lot of the tendencies that I had, which was the tendency to survive. They wanted to survive. They're in a difficult situation, so they're surviving the best way they can. The cars may have failed to where they are in the situation that they're in, but I can identify with what they're going through.
What inspired you to write and create a book like this?
I think one of the major things is working for a lot of nonprofits and working for a lot of organizations that come into our community and they treat the symptom of what's going on. I think that a lot of organizations come into our community and they profit off our pain. African American pain is big business. So because we are in a situation that we're in, people can come and benefit from doing work with us. But as they're doing work with us, they really don't understand what we're going through because they haven't lived it. And it's just the one of the issues is that we're not articulating it. Part of the reason is because it's a painful conversation to have. Some conversations are too painful to talk about, And we're actually taught as young people, this is something that you don't talk about. You only talk about what people are okay to hear. So I talk about that a little bit. There's like a intro in one of my stories called The Lion Tamer. So I don't want to give it all away, but The Lion Tamer kind of talks about where we're being trained to only say what people are okay to hear.
What explain your book to our listening audience, because what I gather is the title Journey of the Beta Fish is you're thinking an aquarium, you're thinking, but it's not like that.
Right.
So can you explain to us without, I know you're an author,
Yeah,
book
yeah.
sales and stuff like that,
Right.
without giving too much away, because it's kind of like stories, but it's about our community. So
Definitely. Well, when you grew up in the community, all you like when you say, I want to move away from here because it's dangerous, right? And people say, well, it don't matter. It's dangerous everywhere, but from traveling, it's not dangerous everywhere. There's just something that people say to make it okay where you are. You know what I'm saying? It's a very restricted mindset that every place is like ours, So that's something that I realized through traveling. It was one time in particular where I was in Belgium, right? And man, I was like going through Europe, and I was like starting to run out of money. You know what I mean? So I was like losing weight. I think like the food there is like almost twice as much as the food here. So people don't eat as much and they smoke more cigarettes, right? To kill their appetites. You know what I mean? So because my money was like starting to kind of run out, I was I was walking a lot. So, people like they give directions different there. So one night I wanted to go out, it was like a Monday night or something like that. And I was talking to this guy, and the guy was like, I said, "Hey, man, where's the club at?" And he was like, "Man, it's about 45 minutes that way, and then you're gonna come into a big bill, and then it's about an hour that way." You know what I mean? That's kind of how he told me directions. And I was like, "Hey, I don't have nothing to do. I got time." So I just started walking, and I'm telling you, I had to walk probably like I would say I had to walk like about 10 miles, honestly. Because
just to go clubbing?
you know what? It didn't seem far until I got there. You know what I mean? It's like, all right, I'm just gonna keep walking, then I'm gonna see a building. Okay, I'm already halfway here. So then I'm gonna go that way, right? I didn't want to turn around and go back. But as I was walking, I didn't see anything. Like I'm watching, you know what I mean? Like I'm not from here. And I'm just kind of watching. And it was no danger on the street. Like none. You know what I mean? And then it was no homeless people. It was no trash on the street. I walked like 10 miles. And I was like, it was no loud music as far as the cars. And I was in Brussels, uh, which is the capital of Europe, by the way. It's like the DC of Europe. People don't know that. I was like, this is amazing. And then when I got to the club, my feet were hurting, but I was talking to people. I was talking to this guy from the Congo, and we just kind of talked about it. It was their social system is amazing, to where there are no homeless people and things like that for real. People from other parts of Europe, they come to this area in Europe. It's called Benelux, which is Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands. You know what I mean? So we're like around Amsterdam and all that. You know what I mean? Because their social system is so amazing, to where they have like high levels of education and things like that for free, free healthcare. A lot of stuff like that. And I was just like, this is really interesting to me. You know, but when I got back here, first of all, when I got back here, the first thing it was, I don't know if you're from the South Side of Chicago or not, but there was a train that it was like you can get on a train for free, but it stopped on 55th and at the Green Line. I got off of that train, so I was in Europe for about 3 weeks. I didn't have any issues or anything like that. I walked around, like there was one situation where I walked for 10 miles, but then I walked back 10 miles, but I took another route getting back. I still was the same thing. No issues. I'm a type, I don't like stay in great hotels. I stay like in, a mix of what do you call them? where you share rooms and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So I'm backpacking, so I got my bag and stuff like that. I got off on 55th, and this is 3 weeks of like straight peace, just talking to people, and the conversations I was having with people was very interesting. But I got back, I got off on 55th. I had to walk home, and I wasn't here for 5 minutes, and I heard gunshots as I was walking. You know what I mean? So that's something that connected me to that every place is not the same. That now I know. I've been there for myself. It's not the same. But when people think that everything is the same, then they don't. It makes them hesitant to challenge themselves or to go out and see anything because you just have this saying that every place is the same. You know what I'm saying? So in the sense that I did see those I did see those other communities to come back and see how kind of we handle each other. You know what I'm saying? It's something that is very unique in the world. You know what I'm saying? Like it's something that is very uh it's very unique to our people. You know what I'm saying? And that's something that I also talk about in the book about, the fact that we are the descendants of individuals that was right beside each other that had to fight the person next to them in order to survive. And then also like they were manipulated and things like that, you know. So uh I just started looking at the different factors of why we're like that. And I've been like to a lot of countries, even countries with African Americans like Canada and things like that. I've been all over to almost all the provinces, and it's not the same. You know what I'm saying? So it was as my daughters are getting older, and I have a daughter that I'm 41 years older than, and it was alarming to me that I want us to build strong families. I want our bloodline to continue and things like that. But I'm looking at our situation and I'm like, man, this is dysfunctional on so many levels, and we're not really talking about what the root of the issue is. We're talking about it from the standpoint that we want to talk about or that we feel comfortable. You know what I'm saying? So if we talk about it from that aspect, then how can change ever come?
You stated in your book the beta fish and the Siamese
Fighting fish, yeah,
fighting fish has some qualities with the African American community.
guaranteed.
Why you think they have the same qualities as African Americans?
Well, to just kind of talk about the beta fish. If you have a tank and you have a beta fish in it, like one beta fish, one male, you can put other fish in the tank, like goldfish, other like angelfish or things like that. But what you can't do is put another beta fish in there, right?
Why?
Because if you do, they will attack each other and kill each other, right? So, in saying that, uh, even when they mate, they have to be separated immediately because if they're not separated after they mate, then they'll kill each other.
I'm trying my best to get the logic of that.
I'm about to explain it to you.
Okay, go ahead.
So for that reason, they are perpetually on the verge of extinction. Do you know any people like that? Can't be around each other. When they mate, then they have to be away from each other. Or they'll kill each other. On the verge of
I
extinction.
wouldn't necessarily say that every African American male or female.
We're not talking about every. You know what I mean? That's the thing. So I went to school and it's like, we have like this, I don't even remember the class, but you got to look at like the means, the medians like that. You know what I'm saying? Most of our households are single parents and things like that. You know what I mean? You'll know people and they've been together for years, but as soon as that kid comes, then they can't get along. Or as soon as they get married, then they get divorced. You know what I'm saying? So you have, and that's another thing that I learned from being abroad. When I would go abroad, I'd be like, I have this idea that, man, I'm in Spain, I'm about to go and I'm about to meet like a Spanish woman. You know what I mean? But the women that was my age at the time I was going, I was like in my late 30s, they were already married. And most of the places that I've been, the people are already married. They're already building. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's something, but I didn't know anybody really, maybe like 5 people out of the many people that I knew that were married, you know what I'm saying? And happy and prospering and building together and things like that. And that was weird to me. I thought, when you're in this situation, you're thinking that, man, most people are not married in the world. That's not true. You go to Italy, you go to Spain, you go to London, people are married and they're with their families and things like that. The divorce rate and the people not being married, people would like to dispute this, you know what I'm saying? But I'm telling you what I saw for myself. I'm at different monuments and things like that, and people are there with their families. I'm there like single man, you know what I mean? Where I'm gonna go and I'm gonna meet someone, or even in Canada, it's like a lot of people that were of marrying age, they were married already. You know what I mean? You don't see 45, 50-year-olds individuals that had never been married. Maybe they were married and got divorced.
How can we change the culture in our community? Okay, let's say we're not the beta and the Siamese fish.
Right. We're not. We just act
Well,
like them.
yeah, but let's say we're not. There's going to come a time
Uh-huh.
that you know that two fish can get along, or or fight a common cause. It goes back to the African proverb, which is the Greek mythology, that an enemy of my enemy is my friend. We must work together for a common cause.
Mhm.
So you can't say African Americans, even though we disagree ideology, or we just don't get along. I've seen gangs have done that, the Crips and the Bloods,
Mhm.
but we don't do that. So for time's sake, can you briefly explain?
That's like a solution that I put like on the very last
Oh, my
paragraph
bad.
of
I'm
my book.
sorry. I'm sorry.
But you know what? I think that part of the healing process is to acknowledge the different issues within our community. You know what I mean? So for time's sake, first of all, we have to acknowledge certain things that we all know, but we refuse to acknowledge. And I put them in my book, and even in the book, I kind of spoke about the fact that some of the things that I'm writing, I may be ostracized for saying it, but I'm not saying anything that anyone doesn't know. You know what I mean?
What do you want people to get out of this book when they purchase it?
Well, the book is a bunch of different life lessons, and for me, like I said, I started writing it for my daughter, so they would not have to learn it the way I learned it. You know what I mean? Which is through blood. You know what I mean? So it's like I'm an intellect, but I'm an intellect through blood, not through a bunch of books. So everything that I saw. So, and saying that, I want us to acknowledge the things that are going on and not be blindsided, because certain things we don't talk about, so people continue to make the same mistakes that their parents made. You know what I mean? So that's one thing. And two, what I wanted to do is I wanted to put painful conversations on the table so we can start discussing them.
And how they can get a hold of you so they can purchase the book?
You can go to my Facebook page. It's called the Manco Coaching. You can go on there. You can hashtag Journey of the Beta Fish. You can also order it on Amazon. And for all my friends and family, just get up with me.
And for you appearing, we got our sister Facebook page that you can advertise your book and stuff like that, courtesy of Intellectual Radio, and our executive producer Earl Winfrey. So you can advertise your book,
okay,
so people can get it and purchase it as many times as you want to.
Okay, well, I appreciate that.
So
Nate, you already know what to do.
Thank you. Don't be a stranger to the drive. Okay?
I won't. Thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
That's going to do it for us on the Drive at 5 on intellectualradio.com/iHeartRadio station. Thanks to Earl Winfrey, our executive producer, Wanda, who is behind the scenes. Next week, the one and only Dorothy Brown, a special edition of the Drive at 5 next week. Have a good week, everyone.